we have this very structured program. And it kind of is intimidating when you've been sitting in jail for 2 years doing nothing every day. All of a sudden you gotta get up and do this and do that and do that. And it's kind of overwhelming, but it's important to building success. And being comprehensive, just recognizing that addiction has impacted every aspect of life. So therefore the solution is gonna have to impact every aspect of life. Everything from educational issues, relational issues, career issues, health issues, financial issues. It involves everything. And so when you get involved, you need to recognize that it's not just about, that's how I got in addiction ministry in the first place, is that I started with basically having a Bible study group for people in addiction. I started doing that back in 1997 for 10 years. And I realized real quickly that having a group that meets twice a week and talks about, for an hour, isn't, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because, hey, come to our group, yeah, but I don't have transportation to get to your group, and I don't have a place to live when I leave your group, I don't have a place to sleep, I don't know where I'm going to eat after I go to your group, and you start realizing, wow, this is a lot bigger than just having a nice little conversation. So recognizing that there's a lot of issues involved is important, I think, in really addressing that in a Christ-like way in everything. So, let me, and I'll end this and then I'll take questions. When we started, statistically, in the United States, recovery rates, in other words, people who decide that they want to pursue recovery and successfully, get sober and clean, is between 3 and 10%. So when you get into this, you think, wow, that's not very good, very good recovery rates. That's not very good success rates. And so, and for people who are by nature, we like results, we like statistics, we feel good when we get results, and we're in a results-oriented culture. I felt like it was really important that we be careful how we define success, because if we define success wrong, we're going to end up becoming discouraged, and we're going to end up quitting in areas where we don't need to quit. So when we started His Way, one of the things I said was that success is sowing the seeds of recovery in every person's life. That I can do. What happens with them, how they grow, how they flourish, how all that happens, I don't have any control over. This parable of the sower, right? Sow the seed, you don't have control over the ground that's going to land on. You just sow it indiscriminately everywhere you possibly can. And so that's always been our focus, is I've preached ever since we started the program that if a guy's there one day and he's breathed Jesus for a minute, that's been a seed. If they're there for a year and they've heard it every day and have the opportunity to be loved and have that experience, that's sowing seeds every day. Whatever happens to them, that's going to be between them and God. And so their failures are not my failures. Their successes are not my successes. And so we just celebrate with them. We can weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. And we've been able to, I think, persevere and not get wrapped up in being burned out, because we keep that squarely in focus. So let me stop on that for a second and maybe answer questions, take comments, whatever we got to say. Yes, ma'am.
So many people with addiction also have some sort of mental illness along with that. How does His Way handle that?
Okay.
And part 2, is there a her way? What about the ladies?
Right.
Okay.
So those are both excellent questions. His Way, by the way, is Jesus, not the guys. So we try to make that clear, because their way didn't do well, so we're trying to get into His way and not their way. So hopefully His way for her is kind of our, anyway, so semantics. So the first part, one of the things in terms of defining what we're going to do, we are not a medical facility, we're a faith-based ministry. And so we don't pretend to be doctors, we don't pretend to do that type of thing. So we definitely approach it from a spiritual point of view. We recognize that there's mental health issues. And so we have a lot of mental health professionals involved now with the process, with helping guys. We actually just this year really focused our attention. We've always had kind of counselors and therapists somewhat involved, especially in serious cases. But we've kind of moved to more where we want to get more counselors involved, so everybody has a counselor on a regular basis, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things we're really trying to work. We don't, we're hesitant to get involved with medication-assisted treatment for a couple of reasons. One, because we're not qualified. Two, because our culture is so medication answer-oriented in the first place that I don't think that's not an answer, but I just like that not to be our first answer. And so most of these guys, I mean, for instance, a lot of the guys in our program, you know, they started with Adderall back when they were 7, you know, and that became the answer to everything until it wasn't. And then then meth became a better option than Adderall. And so I want guys to learn how there's other coping techniques besides just medicine to answer everything. If I have anxiety issues, maybe I can learn through prayer and through meditation and through other things to manage that instead of just grab a Klonopin. And so, you know, those kind of things are kind of the things we're trying to do with guys to help train them in that way. Not to say there's not a place for it, and I always tell guys, you know, once you complete our program, we want you to get set up, you know, particularly in serious situations, we want you to get set up and make sure you're getting whatever medical treatment. Let's make sure we know what your homeostasis is first, what you really are first, because a lot of times they're just bouncing from place to place, and it can be a mess. So that's kind of how we've approached that. In terms of women, or two things, we'd love to open a women's facility. There's not really a strong women's facility in Huntsville at all. There's a really large one in Birmingham. There's some in Decatur and Florence and other places, but not in Huntsville. So we'd like to start one. There's been a couple of cautions. One, dealing with women's a lot different than dealing with men. I mean, it's completely, in fact, I was talking to some people in recovery right now, and they kind of, the woman said, "Oh, I never do women." You know, that's just a whole other story. But, so actually, I mean, actually I have a band on here. I have 3 bands on that I always wear, and the pink one I committed to wear, that I was going to wear it until we start a women's program. Okay, so it's pretty faded now, and it ain't coming off till we start a women's program. So our venture in doing that has been that we started a non-residential program for women called Rediscovery. And so it's kind of back where I was when I was having evening, you know, group meetings on a regular basis, that kind of thing. But I felt like the best way there's a lot of Christian women who want to get involved in helping women. Problem is they don't have a lot of experience, and a lot of times we tend to be too nurturing, that's not really the best help in a lot of this. So I want them to get experience. So we started Rediscovery as kind of a way for people to get experience with helping women and kind of wait for God to kind of raise up what's going to take to have a residential program for women. So we're praying about that, we're hoping for that. If you have some ideas on that, I'd love to hear them. We are helping, there's actually a program in Hackleburg, I think, out somewhere west of here in the middle of nowhere, that actually is starting a pretty good-sized women's program that we're helping them get started. And because the husband of the woman who started it went through our program and that type of thing. So we're kind of involved in helping that right now, but don't really have anything in Huntsville yet. But pray for that. I believe God will open that door. Anything else? Yes?
Where do you get your patients, clients, whatever?
Okay, good. Number one way we get them is word of mouth. The addiction community is very small, and they talk to each other a lot, so they quickly get the word of mouth out. Of course, we have a website, so people learn that way. I hear a lot of stories about mama getting on the website, trying to find the best program they can for their child. Probably our biggest way now is through the court system. Most of the people who are incarcerated in the state of Alabama have addiction-related problems. Right. They can be furloughed to our facility. They can sometimes probation will give them the option of coming to our facility, that type of thing. It's interesting. Most programs will say, we'll even have an attitude like, how many court-ordered people do you have in your program? Which means that those are a bunch of people who are there who are just taking up space who don't really care. Most of our a lot of our court-ordered people come there because they're just trying to get out of legal situations. I have found few that haven't been transformed, though, by the experience of that experience. So bring them on. I'd be glad to take the most hardened, disinterested person in the world and see what God can do in their heart. And so I'm good with that. And so, a lot of our guys come. We have a really strong relationship with the court system and a good relationship with them, so that's helped a lot.
Is there a charge?
There is. Yes, that's a good question. When we started the program, we've always charged, and for this, well, one, because we got to afford what we're doing, so that's the number one reason. But two, I want people to invest in what they're getting. I think we make a mistake when we just offer everything for free to people, because that doesn't help them appreciate what they're getting. There is a charge. Originally we charged $1,250 for 30 days. Now most of that was paid by families or parents, but guys would say, I can never make it, I can't get in there because I don't have the money. I said, what's funny is you spend a lot more than that on drugs on a weekly basis. So my guess is if you want this bad enough, you'll figure a way. I'm not suggesting illegal activity. But like for instance, Dana Mercier. Dana graduated our program in 2012, so 10 years ago. Dana so desperately, he was an older guy. Dana, he's probably in his 50s at the time. Dana so desperately wanted help. He went out, he was living under a bridge. He went to labor finders every day, got paid, 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks a day. He'd bring it to me every day and give it to me to put in the safe until he could get his $1,250 so he'd get in the program. And he's still on our staff to this day, That's the kind of heart that it takes. And I always encourage guys, ask for help. Because every time somebody helps you, you got a person you're connected to who's now invested in your success. So whether it's a church, whether it's Aunt Judy, whoever it is, you're developing a community of support. So that's kind of how we did that. Now we've changed it since then. So about a year and a half ago, the beginning of last year, 2020, 2021. What year are we in now? 2021, right. Beginning of 2021, we changed our program from a 6-month program to a 9-month program. When we did that, guys did work 30 days and then they got a job. And then once they get a job, then they pay for their program through their job. And we've done that. Most programs don't do that. Most programs have you work for the program and then you justify your existence kind of by the fact that, in fact, I visit this program, they just have a landscaping business. Everybody works in a landscape business. Is that how they pay their rent or whatever for the program? But the problem with that is once you finish, then and you leave the program, you don't have a job, which is the same place you were when you got there. So I wanted guys to get jobs so that when they leave, they're growing to something. They're not leaving and going back into nothing. Because my guess is you go back into nothing, you'll end up doing what you did last time you had nothing. So we try to help them get jobs and they pay their way through the program. We've changed that, so now you're 60 days before you can get a job. And so the entry fee is now $800. So we reduced the entry fee for a much longer period of time. And then they pay a little more for weekly rent on the backside. So that's how it kind of works out financially. So now about 30% of our expenses are covered through guys paying rent. About 50% of 40% of our program is covered through our thrift stores. So thank you for shopping at our thrift stores and donating. And then the rest of it's through donations and churches and programs and individuals and stuff like that. Yes?
Do you have very many veterans in your Western program?
We have some, we have some. I don't know if there's much more I want to say about that. I mean, we've had a number of veterans come through our program. Mm-hmm. Anything? Yes?
What kind of age are you after?
Well, the youngest we take is 19. The oldest we take is living. You can't be past that. But I think the oldest we've had is like 72, maybe, something like that. I would say our average age is probably 30s to 40s, typically. Most of the guys in their 20s, they're not really ready for recovery yet. They're not done partying. They're not done thinking they're invincible and Superman and that kind of thing. It's usually about mid-30s to 40s when you start losing all this and you start realizing I'm not getting anywhere fast and it's kind of going downhill and it's not getting any better, that people start getting serious. I always kind of call that kind of point our sweet spot, kind of hit people there. But so, that's probably our key point. It varies. I love the dynamic that we have a lot of times, because a lot of times you have the 60-year-old guy with the 20-year-old kid, and it's like they're like dad and son, sometimes granddad and son. And it's been a great dynamic, because one of the big issues, the issue I would emphasize, is almost every one of the guys in our program have father issues. They had bad fathering experiences somewhere along the way. Most of them, in fact, I've been surprised. I go up to the jail once a week and interview guys to come in the program. I can't tell, I've never, I would say within the last couple of years, I've heard this. So I always ask, give me your dad's name and your mom's name. I've had probably, I don't know how many, I've had numerous, at least probably every week one, who will tell me he has no idea who his father is, doesn't even know his name, never has. And I've seldom ever seen, that's almost mind-boggling to me. At least you know your dad's name. You may not have any good regard for him, but you know his name, right? But now I hear all the time, have no clue who my dad is. And so having men with men is really critically important. Have older men with younger men who can start becoming fathers and grandfathers and older brothers and that kind of stuff, to an experience that typically has been a very painful one in most guys' lives, to have a very broken relationship with their fathers or with men. Yeah.
So I imagine you have certain rules if they violate or keep out of the program.
Can be.
So if someone is kicked out of the program, what's it take for them to get back in?
Okay. Good question. I hate the idea of kicking people over. I didn't want to have that in the program, and yet when I talked to guys, when I originally talked to guys about being in the program, they said, if you don't do that, we'll just take advantage of that every which way you can. So you got to be that way. And it's been painful. Early on, it's been painful. I remember one of the first guys I ever dismissed from his way went out here and jumped off a bridge the night that I dismissed him. That's hard to stomach. That's hard to process. But I've had to learn to over time. Because one of the things, I didn't get into my notes, but one of the things I want to say about enablers, because that's our biggest problem, especially as Christians, we're the worst. We want to save everybody. And so we want to take responsibility for everybody else's mess ups, and that's the thing that keeps them from not changing. You can't protect people from their consequences.